Hello, welcome to this video where I'll be discussing CMI Assignment 501. This is part 12, so the last video in the series for this assignment. I'll be talking through assessment criteria 3.4, which is task 3. Only one assessment criteria for this task. Write a proposal for building a culture of mutual trust, respect and support with teams and individuals. Develop an approach for building a culture of mutual trust, respect and support with teams and individuals. In this short video, I'm going to give a couple of pieces of theory that could be relevant or helpful, possibly, and some suggestions for how you might break this down and approach it. It's really asking us for a plan, a way forwards, and we just need to make sure we cover mutual trust, respect, and support. And we need to think about how we would grow that within a team and also with individuals. So there we go, just sort of breaking it down into its parts, really. So theory to begin with. So this very good New York Times article, which you will find online, Project Aristotle, what Google learned from its quest to build a perfect team. So it was a study done in 2012 internally. So Google does quite a few of these experiments, and it looked at what are the factors that equate to a high-performing team. Now, of course, context is key here. So Google, particularly in 2012, was all about innovation and looking for the next exciting idea. I think, certainly its founders were very much about that, and they were quite comfortable to challenge. One of the early originators in Google was, if he didn't like ideas, he was quite notorious for saying what he really thought. So there was still, I think, elements of that in the culture, and again, yeah. So this is very much an organisation orientated to innovation. So I think it's important to just to mention that because these factors, I think, are certainly helpful for technology organizations, but actually not every organization is like that. We're not all Googles, and so different organizations might value different things. I suppose that's what I'm saying. Anyway, the strongest factor that came out in terms of a high performing team by Google's standards: psychological safety, the belief that we can take interpersonal risks within the team so that we can challenge each other, say what we really think, even if that goes against the grain, possibly even challenging the boss, that type of thing. So again, Google's always experimented with things like reducing hierarchy and that type of thing so that people can challenge each other regardless of hierarchy. Dependability, people do what they said that they would do. So that certainly relates to trust, I think. Structure and clarity, people understand their role, their mission, they understand what they're there to achieve. That's key, actually. There's a number of different studies on team dynamics that show that actually clarity of purpose, like knowing our mission, knowing what we're there to achieve as a team and as an individual within that team, is dead important to the effectiveness of the team. Meaning of work. So do people on the team derive personal meaning from their work? Do they enjoy it? Do they find it fulfilling? And impact of work, are we able to see the results? Can we see the effect that we're having so that we're not just a little cog in a big machine, but if you're supporting clients or customers, that you can see the impact, that you have feedback on what you're doing. Nobody likes to feel that their work is meaningless. Very hard to stay remotely engaged if you're not really sure what the effect of your work is. So 5 factors, which I think are helpful to think about. And so one thing that we could do, if you're thinking about, team culture and team performance, is maybe you get people in your team to think about those 5 factors and give a score, scale of 1 to 5, 1 being low, 5 being high. What would people say about your team at the moment? And that might give you some interesting feedback, particularly if people are, honest. Not always comfortable to do if you're leading that team, because to some extent, of course, that's feedback a little bit on you and your management. So it's not always comfortable to do this, but what you're doing there is getting some genuine feedback that might be helpful in terms of actually where should your focus be. So if one of those areas was a bit lower, then what we could say is, okay, having benchmarked a little bit, now we could perhaps put some focus in. When I do this, one that often comes out is structure and clarity, and that means that perhaps leaders might need to think a little bit more about mission, communication, actually kind of what's our, it's often how the purpose of the team is clearly articulated and clarified so people understand what they're doing. Anyway, it'd be different things, but it's a really useful exercise to do, provided people are honest. And yeah, and then that can just point you in the right direction. Where might your focus best need to be? Another big idea over the last 20 years or so has been this concept of the coaching culture. This is one way of looking at it, I suppose. What is a coaching culture? And I think this orientates very much to support, but a coaching culture creates a climate where people can freely give and receive feedback, support and stretch each other's thinking. So where coaching conversations are normal and managers don't just give feedback, but they coach as well. That is inviting the person they're managing to contribute and to think for themselves. Challenge each other with support and stress test ideas where appropriate, and engage in development conversations that are short in length but strong in impact. There we go. So if you want to use this, just by all means quote this little video. This do fine as a reference for this, because I think there are numerous different sources that kind of feed into this. But I think that this is a neat summary. I think what is a coaching culture, and then I suppose if you had that, if that was how your team operated, what might you see? Likely, I think you'd see high levels of engagement and quite a bit of creativity. That's what I think. I think, if that matters in your context, then a coaching culture is a really useful thing to think about. So, mutual trust, I would say, what do we need to think about in order to build mutual trust? Again, this is one of the key things it's asking us to think about. It's about building relationships with individuals within the team, but also across the team as well. So it's the process of taking time, possibly away from the office, actually, and getting people together. I think I've got to be honest, I know a lot of people really love working remotely and that sort of thing, but I do think that building relationships is harder if you never come together in person. It can be done to some extent, but it's just better if you've got people in the same physical space, I think. That's just me. I'm a Gen Xer, so I bring my own bias to that. I think contracting, so it's actually about kind of sitting that, particularly at the early stage of a project, or if you've got kind of a newly formed team, actually working through and articulating purpose, measurement, metric, expectations, that type of thing, and making that so that everybody can contribute to, what are we here to achieve, and how do we work together well. Peter Hawkins says some really good stuff on team contracting, but yeah, he says, it's those big conversations, big questions around our mission. What are we here to accomplish? How do we work together well? What can we do together that we can't do as individuals? And how do we connect with our stakeholders, our other stakeholders? And I think the last one is, how do we learn together? How do we make sure that we continuously improve? All really good questions in that kind of contracting space. I think the other one is thinking about our interactions with one another. Trust is quite hard to develop. It's very easy to burn, and I think that one bad day where we might be a bit sharp or critical or cut someone down or be perhaps overly, um, uh, overly critical, because maybe we're a bit tired or a bit stressed, or that challenges come at the wrong time, can ruin a relationship very quickly, and that can be a very hard place to come back from. So building trust is a slow process, but ruining it is very, very fast. One thing I've seen that happen actually, where a team of people, and one person, they sort of challenged the boss a little bit about something, and the boss kind of snapped back at them, and the person just went really quiet and just kind of stopped engaging really, and they just went quiet for the rest of the day. And I'm not sure how long it takes to kind of redevelop that trust. So yeah, respect, clear success measures and expectations. It comes back to contracting as well. So do we know what winning looks like, and are we measuring? Do we know how we're being measured and evaluated against that accountability? So we do need people to do what they said that they would do. That relates, I think, to dependability. That, like Google's model, honest feedback so that people know where they stand and where they need to focus to improve, and also the courage to do that. It's quite, I think, for anybody, whether it's a manager or a colleague, actually addressing issues and giving them more critical feedback is very tough. And I think if you're a very warm and agreeable person, it can be quite a stressful thing to do, but not doing it is really bad. And actually you lose, as a manager, you can lose the respect of your team if you don't hold up the mirror from time to time and challenge unhelpful or damaging behaviors. So yeah, these are, I think, practical things to think about in terms of respect. And support, I think, coming back to the coaching culture idea there, so it's that coaching and mentoring happens, that it's it's not just always pushed to the right, that there is time for these really kind of thinking conversations. Opportunities for personal and professional development, so that if people have training needs, that they're able to go and do training, and that they're supported in that, that they have, that kind of learning and development is integrated into how people work in the organization, and that people don't feel guilty for saying, actually, I could do with a bit of help in terms of developing this, technical, professional, personal area. So is that again encouraged, or is it sort of frowned upon? Approachability and generosity with time. Again, that's that, line managers don't hide in their offices, and or when you kind of, if you don't want to talk to the boss if they're always looking a bit stressed, and they're kind of charging around, sort of very, very busy. That's not great, and it means that you could then end up with a bit of a dislocated culture where people are just going to stay quiet, and then that carries into meetings where people just stay quiet, and it just means that we end up in a very kind of low energy transactional sort of space, really. So yeah, do we give people our time? There we go. Yep. Last little thing that you can do, if you've got a few words left, I think this is a really nice thing to do with this assessment criteria, but also to pull it all together. Looking back over the assignment, what have been the key things that you've taken from it? So as you've worked through the various, for 12 different assessment criteria, are there any kind of key ideas or thoughts that you've thought, that's really, really helpful? How would you then take those thoughts and ideas back into your team? How do you share them, apply them in order to give your team culture a boost? I think that would be a really good way to conclude the assignment. A little bit of reflective practice and then a few actions. So, yeah, not just specifically about this assessment criteria, but looking back over the whole thing. 12 points is a big old piece of work. What have been the light bulb moments of the things that you've taken from it? How do you transplant them back into your team in order to, yeah, give your culture a little bit of a boost, perhaps? That is 501 complete. Well done. It's an epic, this. It's a really big assignment. 4,400 words is not a lot given the scope that we cover. I've definitely spoken more than 4,400 words as I've been doing these tutorials. Anyway, I hope that you found it a helpful and useful thing to do. Again, this kind of really structured, in-depth reflection and analysis around leadership in the organization. If you are doing more than one assignment, I hope that you enjoy that as well. I am doing more videos for other assignments, which I'll be sharing on my YouTube channel. Anyway, it's been a pleasure and very good luck with it all. Thank you very much for tuning in.